to meet you, Alex.
Of course. So I just wanted to say welcome and thanks for taking your time for doing this interview. I know we've been kind of back and forth on Instagram a little bit, so I'm glad we finally get this opportunity.
No, thank you for inviting me, Alex.
Yeah, for sure. So I have to ask you the first question I ask anyone: how is it going?
So it's going good here in Puerto Rico. It's hot. We've been going through a heat wave as the states as well, but I don't have a central air conditioning.
Ooh,
So that's why when I if you see my reviews, sometimes you hear a fan because I have a fan pointing at me. I have air conditioning, but not central air conditioning.
okay. That's a little bit better then.
Yes.
So I have to ask, how long have you been interviewing bands for?
So before the channel, like in 2010, uh, I had a blog with a friend of mine here in Puerto Rico, and we started. There was like an internet radio show called RC21, Rock Century 21, and sometimes we interviewed bands there. But after I left that program and I moved to, I was living in Miami at the time. I follow some YouTubers and I actually interview for a living. I work for Human Resources.
Oh, okay.
I won't say the company, but I interview people for a living. And I thought when I first started the channel back in December of 2021, I started it because my ex-wife told me I don't give I don't care about the music you like. So instead of talking to me, why don't you do a YouTube channel? And maybe some people will care what you say. Well, I'm like, yeah, I was thinking about it, but I'm not the most like technologically person. And like there's a lot of like YouTube videos that a lot of special effects and stuff. Uh, and I thought to myself, yeah, I'm not gonna make like a lot of effects. So I thought I could just make it like a dude talking about music on a couch. Like I kept it simple. And when I first started, I knew how to interview people. So I first thought, oh, well, I would like to interview bands, and I actually started interview bands. I started the channel December, and my first interview was in January of 20. So I started pretty like the channel was 3 weeks, and the first artist I interviewed is a artist from Puerto Rico called Ignacio Peña, and I had him as a friend on Facebook. So I sent him a message like, "Hey, I started this new channel. We'd like to interview." And he was bored. He's like, "Yes, I'm bored," and he was promoting. He was doing a vinyl of his classic album, and I bought it. So that was the first interview. So at first, since my channel, I only had like 30 subscribers at that time. What I did is I sent messages in Instagram to smaller unsigned bands that I
Mhm.
knew like the exposure. So I started like interviewing smaller bands and maybe bands from Puerto Rico that were friends of mine. But like what happened is like in February, like the album, no, the channel being like 2 months old. There's a band called Convent, which they're like all female death metal band, and I
Mhm.
send them a message for Instagram, and they're like, "Yeah, it's cool, but you have to ask our agency." So I contacted their agency, All Noir, and I remember they told me, "Well, send us a few videos of your interviews," and they said yes, and they set that up. And after I did that interview, that agency liked it so much that they added me uh, to the roster, and that's how after that, like more agencies kept coming. So yeah, but I started interviewing bands because when I did the channel, I'm like, yeah, I want to talk about music, but since I interview for a living, I think it's interesting because not every channel interviews. So that's how I got into interviewing bands.
Wow, that's quite a story. It's all because of your ex-wife told you to go talk to someone else who might listen.
Yes, she's like, I don't care about the albums. Like, talk to someone else.
Have you always kind of been into, like, metal music, or was it kind of just something you recently acquired a taste for?
Well, I'm a 90s. I really got into music in the 90s. So if you watch my channel, a lot of people know that, yeah, he loves the 90s because I cover almost every band that is 90s. when I was going to name the channel, uh, I don't consider myself like a metal dude. Like, yeah, I like metal, but I also like alternative, shoegaze, ska. I like pop music too. I like hip hop. Uh, I like new metal. I like different styles. So I felt like I don't want to put like the word metal in the channel because I listen to so many things. So I just wanted to be like a like like a channel where I could focus on different things. But yes, mostly I interview like metal bands, but some different areas. But yeah, like I got into music in the 90s. My the first like metal album I bought was Metallica the Black Album.
Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, I bought that one, and it was the first four albums that I bought was Pearl Jam 10, Nirvana Nevermind, and Saigon Kick the Lizard. So with Metallica, those were my first four albums back in the 90s.
That's a nice collection.
Yeah.
So I know you shared your first interview with everyone, but how did you feel going into that first interview? Were you nervous? Were you like really prepared, or how did you feel?
So yeah, for the if you watch the first interview, the first thing is that I didn't know how to use Zoom that well. So it started recording. So there's like the first 20 seconds of that interview is this me looking at the camera. But yeah, I wasn't that nervous because Ignacio Peña is a cool guy. But I remember when I first started the interviews, I always had like a sheet with questions that I wrote down and asked. Now, when
Hmm.
I do the interviews, I don't write anything down. I know what I'm going to talk about, but I keep it more as a free flowing conversation. I think with
Hmm.
time, I got it like more comfortable. Yes, I'm going to ask them, but like I don't like I didn't want to seem like I'm like asking because I've seen some interviewers on YouTube that they like ask a question and then like the interviewer answers the question but gives them something else where you can go along, but they just go to the next question. So I like it to keep it like a conversation. But yeah, the first interview, I wasn't that nervous because I knew. Uh, then the other interview I did to a smaller band, uh, I can I can ask them a question like, "Oh, when are you gonna have shows?" I'm like, "No, we have no shows. We're on a lockdown." I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's true." So at the beginning, yeah, there's some rough around the edges.
So I have to ask, what has changed from your first interview to your interviews that you do now?
So I think the thing that has changed the most is that I'm more loose in the interviews, and usually when I'm interviewing, since I interview for a living, I'm like reading people, so I know like if how they answer, if I can joke with them, or if we can
Hmm.
go off topic. Because if you watch my interviews, I have longer interviews, shorter interviews. Also, there's interviews that we need to keep shorter because the artist has a lot of interviews lined up, so we gotta be mindful of time. Uh,
Hmm.
and it also depends on how I vibe with the artist. Because yeah, there's been sometimes interviews that I've done to like a very known artist, but it like basically it feels like they have a monologue and they're talking. So that's boring for me. So usually I like it more when I talk to up and coming bands because sometimes the conversations are more interesting. And yeah, I made the funny thing is I made a lot of people that I interviewed have come back to the channel to do some of my collaborations, and they become friends with me. So that's a cool thing.
So how do you prepare for these interviews?
So for the interview, first of all, I listen to the albums, and so I listen to the albums and I read, they send you the bios and things. So I'm like, okay, if this is a concert album, I like think, okay, how can this conversation go? But yeah, I listen to the album, I make some notes of like things that would be good for the interview. If they have had some interviews in the past, I see to see so I don't ask them like something that being asked or to know how they are. But usually it's like listening to the albums and uh, usually when I'm about to do the interview 10 minutes before, I put on some music that has nothing to do with the artist. So yeah, to get loose, I might put some in sync. like something totally different just to get loose. But yeah, I prepare by listening to the music. I listen to the bar, and I try to prepare. Like if I'm going to ask them questions that like will spawn conversations. And another thing that if you watch my interviews from the early beginning, I always like to talk about the artwork. So that's like if you like, I always like put the artwork when we talk about the artwork.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, that's how I mainly prepare. Listening to the album, uh, doing notes. Okay, like this album is about like questions that I could ask about the album. But sometimes those questions, sometimes I we improvise. You know, they say something else, and we go and have conversations. So I think for interviewers, yes, you can. Yes, you need to know what questions you're going to ask, but also sometimes artists like when it's like a free flowing conversation.
For sure, kind of like you're talking to a friend, not like a job interview.
Yes, that you're talking to your friend on the couch.
So the big question is, who was your favorite interview?
Well, I've had a lot of interviews. Well, if you go to my channel, I think I have like 325 interviews.
Yeah, quite
There's,
a few.
there's more interviews than, and there's actually artists that I interviewed twice.
Mhm.
Like recently, I interviewed Kaban, and I had it for a second time on the channel, and he remembered me. Uh, but my favorite interview, uh, I really like recently Mark from the Eternal. That was a great interview because you know he was really nice guy, and when I was talking to him, it was his 11 at night, and
Yeah.
he talked to me for like for almost an hour. Like I'm like he's really nice because someone else would have like, hey, we keep this short. I want to go to bed. So that interview was great. I interviewed. I really enjoyed an interview I did with a band from Puerto Rico called Zafacon. They're
Mhm.
no longer they disbanded, but when they put out their last album, they did an exclusive interview just with me, uh, and they were already going to broke up. But I told them I want to focus the interview on the album
Right.
because they said that a lot of interviews they were asking this stuff that got them mad. But I focus on the album, and yeah, to this day, they tell me that that was the best interview that they ever did. And it was a great interview because I had the whole band with me and we went track for track and really talked about it. So it was good because even though it was their last album, a lot of people like enjoyed that interview. And we did it in English so more people could understand it.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I know we talked about like your favorite interview, but how do you handle an interview if it's not if it doesn't go like how you thought it would go, or it's not like the artist really isn't collaborating with you? How do you get through those tough ones?
So, the worst interview I had on the channel, unfortunately, was also a band from Puerto Rico. They disbanded, and I'm not gonna name. Well, the band was called Cranio, and they were like eight. They were like really young. But first
Mhm.
of all, they got on the interview. They were like they put on backgrounds with the Cookie Monster. Were like really immature, and you know I prepared and I'm trying to ask them questions, and they're like joking around and being really disrespectful. And they started talking bad about other bands from Puerto Rico. And I told
Oh
them,
no.
"Do- I'm like, guys, do you want to put this out there? And like, and they're like, oh yeah. So we recorded. We went ahead and we recorded, and it wasn't much the same. So I'm like, you know what? Whatever. I'm gonna put it as it was. And a lot of people were like, yeah, that interview was like was like you because you could tell if you watch that interview. I did it in Spanish, but you could tell like I'm usually like really chill. In that interview, you can tell that I was getting more mad every minute of the interview. And the interview just I put 11 minutes, and I'm saying, you know what? F it. I'm not gonna talk to them anymore. And I put it up how it was, and some people were like, "Wow!" Like I remember I collaborate a lot with a friend of mine called Mary, Señorita Sabrosura, and she's like, "Oh, they were very disrespectful," and they wrote, "I'm like, oh no, we were totally respectful." And funny story. A week ago, I was at the mall, and the lead
Mhm.
singer from that band was working like in a kiosk. And I told my girlfriend, "Oh, I interviewed that dude," and I am like, I so wish to go up to her like, "Hey, remember me?" I'm like, "My channel still exists, but your band does not." But I'm like, "No, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna be like that." So that was the worst interview. I also had an interview that it's a power metal band, which is an interview that's it's has a lot of views, but the dude was like, eh. And he said, and it was a power metal band, and he said on the interview, we're talking, he's like, I'm asking something about that song, and he says, My album has no fillers. And I asked him, so how do you determine what is a filler? And oh, he got so pissed at me. He's like, and I said it because I listened to the album. I'm like, dude, there's a few fillers on this album. Uh, but it was funny because that interview, I still gets views to this day. I'm not gonna name that band, but yeah, yeah, the dude when he said they have no filler. So yeah, usually when it's an interview, when I see that they're not into it or something, I try to keep it like shorter, but
Mhm.
hope like I can't complain. I have some pretty cool interviews, more good than bad ones.
There might be some people going to look for that video now and see which band you're referring to.
Yeah, well, the Puerto Rico one I named it, and they're no longer a band, so whatever.
So I know we kind of talked about your name, like you said you just wanted to be like a chill dude on a couch. But what specifically about a couch and why did you choose a chill dude instead of like, I don't know, a metal music man on, I don't know, a couch or something different?
Yeah,
Like,
so I didn't put metal because I remember back when I used to do that RC21 show. I remember
Mhm.
some dudes here in the metal community told me that I was too pretty to be a metalhead. I'm like, no, you wear pink shirts and yeah. So I have to like be butt ugly or have like super long hair to be like a metalhead. So I didn't put the metalhead because if I put metalhead on the title, I couldn't talk about alternative or other genres. It would have to be strictly metal, and I
Mhm.
wanted to be open because I've actually reviewed Bad Bunny on the channel, their last album, and I actually reviewed the last Taylor Swift record. So that's why I named it Chill Dude. And the funny story is when I first started the first video, I didn't have a name for the channel. I'm like, I don't know how to name it. And I'm friends with Tristan Pratt from the Metal Tris. He was one of the inspirations for me to start in the YouTube channel. So
Mhm.
when I did the first video, I like showed him, and he told me, "You look like a shield dude on a couch," and I'm like, "That's the name." So actually, Tristan from the Metal Trees named me.
Oh, that's kind of sweet.
Yeah.
So, kind of a different question is, do you know how many interviews you've done up to this point? Have you counted them all?
Uh, yeah, I was looking. There's like 325, I think. Uh, roughly. I have more interviews than album reviews.
Mhm.
Because sometimes there's bands that I interview and I review their album. So, but yeah, it's like three. I was because I have them on the YouTube and I put them like in a category. So bear with me. I'll tell you now quickly. As of today, right now, in the interviews, I have 333 interviews.
Wow,
Mhm.
that's a lot
That's a lot of interviews. Yeah. Yeah.
for sure. So, what's something that you would like viewers to know about your channel?
Well, something about my channel is that I always try to do different stuff from other channels. So, for example, like a year and a half ago or more, I was watching. Every channel does like classic albums, talking about great albums. I'm like, and I was thinking to myself, it's easy to talk about like good albums, but what about crappy albums or albums that maybe got bad reviews? And that's when I got the idea for Is It That Bad? So
Mhm.
I'm very good friends with JC Rock and Metal Reviews and The Green Man because before I did that series, I used to collaborate on their channels. So I told them, hey, I got this idea. So the first three episodes, it was just with them. and it has evolved. I brought other YouTubers into the mix, and it's fun because it's like a panel. So, like if and it's called is it that bad with a question mark? So people sometimes people think like, oh, you're already saying it's bad. I'm like, no, we're doing an analysis, and then at the end we vote because there's albums that we've saved that have gotten bad reviews, and then we listen to them. I'm like, we don't understand why they got that bad reviews, and we even dared to cover Tool on the. We talked about the last Tool record, and sometimes other YouTubers tell me, "Oh, I want to do this album." So
Mhm.
it was interesting, and I try to do like some different things, and also something about my channel is like I like humor, so I usually do jokes in my album reviews. Sometimes they're sometimes people like them, sometimes people don't like them. But yeah, I like it depends on the subject matter of the album because the I did a album review the other day for the last pop punk album for the story so far, and that's an album that I couldn't joke about because it's all about the lead singer coping with the death of his father that he died through throat cancer. So yeah, it's a very deep album. So I did like a serious review, and it got me thinking about people that I lost. So it depends on the album review, but sometimes when I remember reviewing like this death metal album that the name was San. It had like San Bug, and I'm just like like some of the song names were hilarious. So it's like a funny review.
So how do you handle I guess, the viewers that don't agree with you or don't like that you said, "Oh, this album was bad" on your channel?
Oh, I've had sometimes trolls. Sometimes I handle shield and make fun of it. So there's this guy that left me a comment the other day, on a short saying like, "Finally, you said something where you used your brain." I also been called like shut up Spanish guy, and I'm like, yes, I speak two languages, so I make fun of them because
Mhm.
I'm pretty relaxed. So I'm not gonna get mad because someone wrote something on the internet. I'm like, it's and I've had the last one that was the most funny one was like I did an album review for the Just album, the
Mhm.
Injustice for All, and the cover is basically a ripoff of Injustice for All for Metallica. And I said on my review that I enjoyed the album, but the cover was cringe. And the dude who like named the album, he's like, oh, if you don't like this, you're gay. And I'm like, what does that have to do with being gay? I'm just saying that the artwork is cringe. And then he's left up by saying like, oh, you're just a Karen. And I'm like, and I did a short like how am I a Karen? Did I call his manager or something like that? So I just made fun of him, and people were like, oh, now you're the Karen on the couch.
Hey, there's a new name for you if you get tired of children on a couch, right?
Yeah.
So what's something that viewers might not know about you?
I don't. I talked something about my private life now. So when I started this channel, I was married. So I mentioned that I got divorced. I moved from Miami to Puerto Rico, and but I don't. I have two kids. I have a boy and a girl. Uh, and there's a blooper I have on the channel when I did a review for the Ghost album Impera, where I'm trying to review the album, and my daughter is right there, and she appears and she does like this. So I put that as a blooper.
That's
So
cool.
yeah, so let's see something else that they wouldn't know. Like now they know that I actually work in HR, human resources. So I have an actual job, people. That's something that they wouldn't know. And a lot of people maybe like I have some YouTubers thinking I'm actually 46 years old. Uh, People thought that I'm younger.
Well, now they know the truth.
Yeah.
So I know you mentioned earlier on that you have made a few friends. Would you say like you've made like a lot of friends just kind of from interviewing?
Oh yes, I made friends. For example, I'm friends with Justin, the guitar player from Workers. he's being on my channel. He's done the Is It That Bad? And he's gonna do a podcast, so I'm gonna be a guest on his podcast.
Mhm.
I'm friends with Greg from the band Drifting to Black, which is a doom metal band. I interviewed him and we really hit it off because we both like sci-fi movies. And he's been on my channel and we talk all the time. Pretty cool guy. There's some other bands that sometimes write me, and I'm really close with some YouTubers that I collaborated with, like JC Rock and Metal Reviews, The Green Man, Chili from Live Listen Erase all the way in Australia. I have Matthew from Diceable. He's in Korea, but he's from Texas. And Nick Sino, he's in Canada. So those five are like a really close. I chat with them all the time through Instagram, and we talk music. Yeah, I made friends with them. And before that, I'm friends with the Metal Tris uh, from from London. So yeah, I made some great friends with the YouTubers and with some bands.
Well, that's awesome. It sounds like something like I'm sure a divorce is not always a good thing, but it sounds like something really wonderful came from it, from her idea. So that's really awesome.
Yes, she's like talk to someone else. Yeah.
So where do you see yourself in 5 years with your channel?
So hopefully, so when I started the channel, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I just started it as a hobby, and then the funny thing is, I never took a break from the channel. Even when I was divorcing, I did more videos because it was a way to it was like a coping device. It was good to focus on something else. So even when I moved, I always kept on doing videos because it was fun. I wouldn't do it if I didn't think it was fun. So I never started the channel to make money, but I now that I have like the subscribers and I can monetize. So yes, who wouldn't want to make extra money doing something that they love on the side? So from 5 years now, I hope that the channel keeps growing. I hope that yeah, that I can reach like different types of people, and maybe my dream is I like my I will the free dream interviews, if you will.
Mhm.
I would love to talk to James Hetfield from Metallica,
Mhm.
Dave Grohl, obviously from Foo Fighters, and Chino Moreno from Deftones. Those are my free like the interviews that I would be like oh, if I interview them, that would be like amazing.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. It sounds like you have like some goals that you're working to, like your dream interviews.
Yes. If I interview any of them, I'll have to pinch myself. So far, the interview that I had that I was like the most awestruck was when I talked to John Bush from Anthrax and Armor Saint. I was like, oh my God, I'm talking to John Bush. That one was like I was like that was a great one. And that interview, I remember when that interview got posted, Liz from Earsplit, which is my favorite people that send me interviews, send me a message like, "Oh, have you seen the news?" I'm like, "No, what happened?" I was featured on Blabbermouth and Metal Sucks about my interview because on that interview, John Bush said that they were working on new Armor Saint. So they did a story about it and put it on the website. So I'm like, wow, I can't, I
Wow.
can't believe that I was on Blabbermouth. So that was awesome because I always read those before I started channels. I always read them, so it was like kind of like a dream. Like I can't believe I'm on that site.
Yeah, that's really awesome. That sounds like a really big achievement.
Yeah. So
So, what is upcoming for your channel? What can viewers who watch your channel kind of like what's in store for them?
so I'll do an Is It That Bad coming soon, but this at least for now, I'm gonna take like a little break of the Is It That Bad for a week, so I can like just chill because I've been doing so many interviews and album reviews. So sometimes I'm like I gotta take a little break. So I take little breaks here and there because I also, sometimes I'm surprised that I have like I do the full time job. I have the kids, the interviews and everything. So no, this weekend I'm just going to relax with my girlfriend. That's the plan for this weekend.
I'm sure she'll appreciate that for sure.
Oh yeah, no, I've actually done videos in her house, and she's like, "Oh, I think it's cool." She's like, "But you'll have to pay me for using my couch."
So I do have one last question here for
Sure.
you. Is there any message that you'd like to give to any of your followers or anyone who's interested in watching your channel?
Well, I like to say to my couchers, that's how I call them. Well, thank you for the support. It really means a lot. Like when I first started it, I thought, yeah, maybe I'll get to 100 people or something, but never in my wildest dream would I think that I would be interviewing so many artists, and uh, it's constantly growing the channel. So I thank you for the people taking time out of their busy day to watch me talk crap from my from my couch sometimes. So yeah, it really it's cool that so many people. And when I see people that watch me, get people from Australia, from Russia, from all over the world. So it's pretty like like humbling.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, it sounds like you've definitely built yourself a little couch empire with your couchers. So that's awesome. And I want to thank you for taking your time for doing this interview. I know it's kind of different in interviewing an interviewer. So
No, it's cool. It's cool. It's good to be on the other side of things.
yeah, for sure. So thank you again. And I really appreciate you taking your time to do this with me.
Thank you, Alex.
All right. Well, take care and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.